Welcome to the Starfighter Podcast.
Welcome back to the Starfighter Podcast. We're talking Bad Batch Episode 8. And here on the panel, we've got Ethan and we've got Landon. What's up, guys?
Saw,
dude.
I mean, guys, this was just an incredible episode. I think hands down, it was my favorite. I think hands down, it was the best episode yet. But also the first episode was really good too. So, but
yeah, that's true.
yeah, I'm really excited to get into it with you guys. Hopefully, you guys are excited to talk some Bad Batch tonight. But before we get into things, for our viewers, our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave us a like and leave us a comment. Join the conversation and let us know how you're enjoying this series. Let us know your thoughts on this episode and these big reveals that we're starting to get, and any theories that you have, because that's a big part of being a Star Wars fan and having fun as Star Wars fans, is sharing our theories with one another. So let us know. But all right, guys, let's get right into things. Maybe we can start out with some initial thoughts. Let's start with Landon. What were your quick initial thoughts overall? Did you enjoy the episode?
I felt like even more than last episode they were on Braca, I felt like they were kind of setting up like maybe meeting Cal Kestis. That was a really cool cameo I thought they could do. But I did really like the cameo this episode. I think it was a really good episode. There's a lot of stuff. It's a pretty dense one. And I just thought it was pretty action packed and had some good scenes.
Totally agree. Ethan, what about you?
Yeah, I think it was a really good episode. Definitely some stuff we'd kind of been waiting for, but I think it was a great way to kind of catch back up after last episode. I thought it was just a perfect segue into the rest of the series.
Same here. I mean, I love the big reveal that we get that we'll talk about. I put a comment on my Instagram story last night because I watched it right when it came out. I was like, I've been waiting for this moment for a while now, and it finally happened. So we'll get into that. But let's start out right at the beginning, basically, with our breakdown. And so we start out again. We're on Braca still, and Wrecker's kind of talking to Omega a little bit, showing her kind of how to dismantle a bomb. And there's not a whole lot to this scene, but it does kind of come into play later on with their mission and kind of the danger that they get into. So we also know that, picking back up from last week's episode, the Junkers have noticed them on Braca and have, sent word to the Empire. And so this is a big deal because now Crosshair, Crosshair knows where they're at, and he's planning to go after them. And I would say that the episode really centers around this coming together, because that the episode is called The Reunion, and so it centers around Crosshair facing off against his brothers once again. But just from these opening scenes, were there anything that stood out to you guys?
I think it was just a good way of getting back in touch with Crosshair, because it had been a minute since we've seen him. Definitely a few episodes, right? So I think definitely just cementing the fact that he is still after them, even though he might have had some reflection on what he's doing, he's still on his mission, and nothing really stopped that throughout this episode. And you kind of see that just with his tactics and everything, he's not against just completely taking them out. So I think it was just good getting back with him in this way before. So
Yeah, and so he, of course, him and his squad are headed to meet up with the Bad Batch. He got back to Camino, and Lama Su is telling Nala Se that, again, they're getting very desperate and they need to take action here. They need to get back, if not the entire Bad Batch, they at least need to get back Omega right so that they can start their plans and get back into production with making their clones and uh, their plans for the next phase of clones. Lamasu mentions having a bounty hunter go and intercept as well. I don't know about you guys, but like I immediately thought that we were gonna see Fennec Shand again. Um, but did you have any thoughts on this, like initially when you saw this scene, Landon?
When I first saw this scene, immediately a theory formed in my head, and I mean, I feel most of it's kind of like wishful thinking, but I think I have a new theory about kind of what's so special about Omega and why the Kaminoans want her so much. I think my theory from that I kind of got from a couple of scenes this episode is like, I think she's supposed to be a force sensitive clone, and then the Kaminoans' plan was to make all the clones eventually force sensitive. But then Omega's the only one, and so that I think sometime during the end of the show or the season, whatever comes first, I think they might set up Omega to be one of the Inquisitors. Um, I don't know, because there's like several Inquisitors that we don't really know much about. Like, there's at least like 3, I think. But yeah, because like she wouldn't turn into a Jedi or anything like that, obviously. So if she was force sensitive, I think she would be captured by the Empire. And because I feel like the show has a lot more negative or like dark undertones than a lot of the other animated shows that Lucasfilm has done. So I don't know. I think it'd be a pretty cool ending to have Omega carried off by the Empire to be turned into an Inquisitor.
Yeah, I like that theory. That's pretty cool for sure. Ethan, did you have anything you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I think it was just, and we kind of see through this episode that the Empire doesn't really have an interest in her. It's also like just the Kaminoans that like have interest in Omega, like specifically. So like Crosshair is not aware, or either like any of the generals are aware of whatever abilities she has. But I definitely think it's just, it gives you a lot more room to speculate as to if there's going to be even more bounty hunters than we saw this episode in the future. And definitely when I saw that scene, I definitely just thought that we were going to see someone else that episode. Um, I was kind of thinking of like Boba at first because of Finnick and all that and the connections. But then I'm like, if they're talking about even more bounty hunters, I'm like, I feel like Boba would have already been there because I'm guessing he's like directly connected to Fennec. So I don't see why they'd have to hire even more people on top of that.
I still think we'll probably see him though at some point.
I think we will, but I don't think it will be. Um, I think him and Fennec are going to be closely connected together because I think that's just how their story is going to be. So it's going to be the pair, I think, if we do see them. And so we'll get into some more like bounty hunter theories later once we get deeper in the episode. But I definitely think there's going to be some solid places where Boba could come into play in this season.
Yeah, and maybe if there's time, we'll go into this a little bit more. But like a lot of people are saying online right now that Mandalorian season 3 is getting pushed back even further. Um, they haven't said that it's not going to be February anymore, but it's kind of looking like it could definitely get pushed back again. But that would lead me to believe that maybe the way that they've structured the story for Bad Batch is going to lead even more into Book of Boba Fett, if that's kind of going to be kind of like the big conclusion to 2021. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And back to the story we got going here, the Bad Batch are focused on like getting parts and like weapons from the junkyard so that they can sell them and kind of like get squared away with Sid. They don't want to be indebted to her anymore. I do think that it's important to take note of this conversation that that Tech has with, or wait, no, maybe it's Echo. But he has this conversation with Hunter where he's kind of talking about how he's basically like, what are we even doing right now, man? Because like we're supposed to be soldiers, and and Hunter's like, things have changed like drastically. But anyway, so Echo is kind of like, if we're not soldiers anymore, then what are we? And so I think that this idea, and the story point like plays a big role in this show, and I think we've touched on it a couple times so far throughout the episodes. I think we're going to get into it more, and it's just like really interesting because we know that there's definitely a plan for the Bad Batch. So what are they going to do, going forward? And they've kind of like hinted towards some things, like with what was his name? Was his name Cut? Right, the other, like, a
Yeah,
deserter,
yeah, cut.
and how he lives like a very different life now. Um, so yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where the Bad Batch end up. But do you guys have any thoughts on this scene, Landon?
I thought it was kind of interesting. Echo wanted to go with Rex. It kind of leads me to believe that at some point Echo is going to die between now and Rebels, because I feel like he would be with old Rex when they reveal that he's still alive in Rebels.
I kind of want to talk about the whole Rex thing too, and that was one thing I was kind of curious that if they're going to talk about is like their feelings on not like ditching with Rex like at the end of last episode, because I'm like, you'd think that would be the smarter play here. But I was especially curious about Echo because Echo is probably serving with Rex longer than he's even been with the Bad Batch. So I was just genuinely curious to see like what his thoughts on it were, because I definitely think he's much closer to Rex than he was with them. And so I think it was nice just seeing that conversation of like him kind of racking his brain around as to why they didn't go with him, and kind of explain how they are like technically in the same situation as Rex, even though it might not seem like it. He's like, at the end of the day, like the war's over, like we're still soldiers, like what we do should be like pretty much the same in a way. And so I thought it was kind of just interesting seeing that point of view.
Yeah, totally. All right, so now the Empire arrives and they face off with the Bad Batch faces off with Crosshair for a moment, but when it seems like hope is lost, Tech ends up activating this cannon that takes down the structure, the hangar that they're in, allowing them to escape. And they all make their way towards the ship's engine, and they kind of get stuck in a bad situation once again, which that was something kind of funny. Like they were able to escape like pretty crazy circumstances back to back. So now this engine is starting up because Crosshair is gonna just like have his guys blow them up with the engine. Well, they have a couple explosives, and so this is kind of where it ties back into the beginning of our episode with Wrecker kind of training Omega on how to use explosives, giving her a little bit of training there. So all of them set up these detonators around the engine so that when the engine finally starts, it's going to break like all around like the exhaust port, and then they're going to be able to like manage to slide down and like escape through like the falling debris and through kind of like a tunnel essentially. And so that's what happens. But the aftermath with this situation is that the flames actually shoot out so much that even though the Bad Batch are able to escape, the flames shoot out and actually hit Crosshair quite a bit, like injure him pretty bad, like push him back pretty far and
Pull a
and
Vader on him.
and yeah, burn him up. It was a pretty crazy scene. What do you guys think of this, Ethan?
I thought it made sense. Like I thought it was pretty funny, just like because that's stuff like I would think about. Like, wouldn't that just mess someone up completely? And so I thought it was pretty like creative scene, and they've kind of had that the past few episodes, and they've kind of always had that with these animated shows mainly. Um, and I think it worked really well, and just their whole escape and everything like that. But also seeing like Crosshair and just like how messed up he got was definitely interesting, because that's stuff you probably wouldn't think about, but definitely makes sense as to why that happened to him. So
Yeah, did you have any thoughts on this scene, Landon?
I really like the scene. I thought it would be crazy if Crosshair went like completely blind. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like if they were gonna make him completely blind, they would be a bit more dramatic about it. But
yeah,
like it doesn't look like he's blind yet. Um, but I thought it would be cool if like for the rest of the show he's blind, but somehow he's still amazing at fighting, or shooting. Um, or what if the Empire doesn't want him anymore since he's injured?
Yeah,
And
that's really
kind of
interesting.
causing some character struggle for Crosshair.
Yeah, that's a great theory because like you alluded to, like he totally relies on his eyes because that's all part of like uh, his special skill being part of the Bad Batch originally. So yeah, great points, guys. All right, so now Hunter and Omega, they get separated from the others and they're trying to make their way back to their ship. All of them are trying to get back to the ship. Well, suddenly Hunter and Omega see in this other uh, hangar that there's just like a bunch of dead clone troopers, and Hunter says that this wasn't the scrappers' work, and then you hear this voice say, "Wasn't much work." And we get this reveal, guys, and I was so ready for it. But Cad Bane is back, and I'm just I'm so pumped about this, guys. I mean, to me, he's not just any bounty hunter. He's like the bounty hunter, and I know that's a big statement to say when we have Boba Fett, but I mean, if you guys remember him, and for our viewers, listeners, if you don't know about Cad Bane, like definitely go and watch some of Clone Wars dealing with him. Like he means business, and like he's just so insane. He's a great character, and he's pretty much the best of the best when it comes to bounty hunters. What do you guys think about this reveal? What do you think, Landon?
I also think it was like the perfect character they could have chosen, and really, we haven't had this character tied up. Like, we don't know when he dies or anything. There's been,
Yeah,
or even if he dies, um, like it's just a lot of loose ends, and like I feel like I wonder how long they're gonna keep using this character. Um, I mean, like he's like the best bounty hunter before Boba Fett. Um, yeah. I don't have a super big connection with him because, again, I haven't watched all of Clone Wars. um, but I do really like the character, and I do remember that he has that he has hidden blasters in his speeder, because of a Lego Star Wars game.
nice.
yeah. So Cad Bane's one of my favorite characters, probably bounty hunters, just because these characters that we got in Clone Wars are like we don't know what happens to them. That was the cool thing with characters like Ahsoka and Bane and all that, is because we don't know what happens to them in the future, but you know that they can probably be incorporated in some way. Um, and he was like the coolest bounty hunter in Clone Wars, and that's with Boba Fett being in it, and with characters like Bosk in it, and all those like old school bounty hunters, like even Dengar and all that. He was the coolest, like by far. Um, he fought Jedi like it's nobody's business, like just like on the daily, like he was just fighting Jedi like one after another. I think he fought like Obi-Wan and some other Jedi. You probably know it before me, Landon, but he was like having a duel with these guys. But just super cool, and
Yeah, he did.
his presence and his look is super cool about him too. Dave Filoni like loves this character. He's talked about a lot, and so I definitely think it was just a matter of when he was going to come back. And I think this was the perfect way, and just like his presence and like his boots and all that, like you just know it's him. Like when he pulled up, and yeah, the scene that he had with Hunter was awesome. So
It took Windu, Anakin, and Kenobi to mind trick him.
I was just about to say that he never like really backed down from the Jedi until they like all teamed up on him and like
and I don't even think he
tried to
broke.
use their
Did he even
powers
break?
together. Yeah,
Did he
he
even
did.
break?
He did break.
That's crazy. Yeah, it took like the whole
Barely.
Jedi Council practically. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I feel like
He's
he's
insane.
definitely like from what we've seen like in Star Wars, he's definitely like the most successful bounty hunter by far. But like kind of what you were saying, Landon, as far as like we have no idea what his future is going to be. I really hope that I mean, I don't want him to die at all. Like I would love for him to just live on for a really long time.
Yeah, I'd love to see him in Mando or
And Boba Fett.
Boba Fett, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also going to mention with this intro for him, you also hear this Western theme music, like a little whistling in the background. I thought that was cool. And it ties in perfectly with this scene because we also get this Western standoff, really old school, two gunslingers here. And I mean, I hate to say it, but I had all the faith in Cad Bane again, because if you know him from Clone Wars, he's no joke. And
Yeah.
he definitely has the edge on Hunter. He's able to draw his blaster faster and shoot him straight in the chest. And that was, I mean, it was just a crazy scene for sure.
I totally thought for a second that Hunter might be able to pull it off, but because they're kind of hyping it up like Hunter's not like other clones, and then I should have known that Cad Bane would just destroy him.
I was just gonna say, like, the shot that he got, it was funny, like the shots, like in comparison, like Hunter's like a good soldier and all, but when it came to that draw, like he had the perfect shot, like literal heart shot on Hunter, like it's nobody's business, and I thought it was just super cool, like.
And
seeing just how
Hunter
good he-
missed and hit the droid.
Yeah, exactly.
That
like,
droid
stuff
is
like
really
that
funny
is
too,
crazy.
by the way. I can't remember. I don't know if you guys remember like the little
Yeah,
line
he was
that
like stealing holocrons and stuff like back in the day.
Yeah, I don't remember if you know the little line that he says in this episode, but it was kind of funny, and also he has a very funny voice and personality to him.
Yeah, his voice is definitely funny. I just thought, like, for people that don't know who Cad Bane is, like, he's like probably instantly like a solid like threat now. Like Hunter's like the leader of this group and was like taking people out like for ages. And he just came in and he's like, "Yeah, I have no problem with clones," and then just nails them right in the chest. Like, I just thought it was awesome seeing that, and I think like going forward it'll be cool like having him be an actual threat. Like I think he'll be more interesting than the Empire in some aspects.
Yeah, for sure. It's great having this element and having him be in the show now. Hopefully, he'll get a little bit more screen time. I mean, I'm sure he probably will, knowing how the episode ends. But before we get to the concluding scene, I'm not upset that Hunter lived, but I also do think it would have been like really impactful if he did die right there. I just felt like that death and Omega seeing how that all played out, I feel like it could have really pushed her character forward. It was definitely
I
an
thought for a
opportunity
second,
for it, you know?
yeah.
She
I thought
probably
for a
thinks he's
second
still
that
dead.
I
That's
thought for
true.
a second. Oh yeah. I
That's
thought
a
for a
good
second
point.
Omega was just gonna go full dark side and do something. I don't know, but I'm really trying
Yeah.
to lean into becoming an Inquisitor because it would be so cool if she became like the lead sister or something. I don't know.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Also, now that you mentioned that, Landon, Omega did have a pretty cool moment where she was definitely showing off her skills with the bow against a couple of troopers when they're first confronted by Crosshair. But yeah, so getting to the conclusion of this episode, Hunter gets blasted in the chest. He's down for the count. Again, it looks like he's dead, but find out in a minute that he's not. Cad Bane just immediately stuns Omega and takes her. And what's great about this next scene and how it all closes is they did something that I didn't expect. Uh, you start to you see the next couple scenes, like little clips from the perspective of Hunter inside his helmet, and I thought
Yeah, it's like Republic
it was so
Commando.
great. Yeah, it definitely was like Republic Commando. Also, great game by the way. Um,
Mhm.
I'm replaying it on the Switch right now, the remastered version. But yeah, you get to see from his perspective inside his helmet. And what was great about that is because of the way that the music also kind of was swelling up in this scene too. It added a lot of emotion. Hunter definitely has like more of this father figure role when it comes to Omega. And so
Mhm.
he's definitely very worried. And then it's very much like a situation where he's panicking. He's like barely waking up, and his brothers are here to like help him up and get him into the ship. And so you're seeing all of this happen again through his eyes. They take off in the ship, and Hunter tells them that the bounty hunter got Omega and they have to go and find her. And that's how we close out our episode. Ethan, what were your thoughts here on this conclusion?
Um, I was just super happy with the episode and all. I thought that scene was really cool. Like we've never really seen that in these animated shows before. Like only time I think we've seen that view really is in Republic Commando. Like, um, and so I think seeing that was really cool, especially through like their helmets and stuff. Because I think that's just interesting, like the detail to it all. But yeah, I do think it was. Um, Again, I think this was just a perfect segue as an episode into pushing the story further more. Like you know what they're going to be doing now, and you know they're going to be on another journey to try and get Omega back. And I think it'll be cool because you know they're probably going to have to go back to Camino to some extent because I doubt Cad Bane's just going to be strolling around with Omega in the back. You know, he's definitely going like straight to Camino, and so I think that's kind of what's going to end up going down to, if not next episode, the one after. But I definitely think they're all going to end up on Camino, and I think that'll be. I don't know. I think it'll lead up to some really cool stuff. Or you
Yeah,
could just see Cad Bane fighting a bunch of bounty hunters over Omega. Like that would be cool too.
Yeah.
Um, like a Fennec Shan versus Cad Bane. That would, I think that's plausible. So, um, who knows? I'm just really glad we got to see Cad Bane back, and it's been a long time, but he's definitely one of the main parts in Clone Wars, like the main takeaways. I feel, um, and so yeah, I'm just glad he's back, and I think the story's starting to ramp up a lot more, and I think it has a lot more like validity to it as to what's going to happen going forward. And so yeah, I'm super happy to see what happens next.
Yeah. Did you want to rate the episode as a whole, and then we'll
Five
pass it
out of
on to Landon?
five. 5 out of 5. 10 10. Easy.
Nice. Final thoughts on the episode, Landon, and then if you want to give your rating.
yeah. So I think I have a prediction for the next episode or the episode after. I feel like before the end of the season, they're gonna kind of have Omega, whether unintentionally or like. I feel like maybe the Kaminoans might teach her how to do it. They might she might tap into her force powers a bit more, or something. I don't know, but yeah, I really like this episode. I think we'll give it a 5 out of 5.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, super happy with this episode, and I can't wait for next week's.
Totally agree. I mean, again, this is my favorite episode by far, especially mainly because of the reveal with Cad Bane and getting to see him again in action. Now he's going to be at least a little bit more involved in the overall story. Kind of getting back to what Landon was saying about Omega and force powers, I do still think that's definitely a possibility. It's kind of, we're still not 100% sure just yet, but it definitely would be interesting. I think maybe a little bit of a pushback is some people feel like not everyone has to be a force user, and that's true. But at the same time, Star Wars is definitely based like on the force. Like even in like movies like Rogue One, for example, it's not about like force users, but the force is definitely talked about quite a bit throughout the movie. Stuff like that, Star Wars and the Force are they just go hand in hand so much. So it's not really a problem when we give Force powers to a character here and there,
Yeah.
even a clone. I mean, it would be a clone that the first time that we see a clone have force powers, so that would be really interesting for sure.
I think that's one cool thing that can be explored is just other ways the Force can affect this universe, other than flinging a lightsaber around, and So I think that would be cool to go into, and that this might be another case of that. You never know.
Yeah, definitely. And then last thing I'll say is, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these things that we're starting to see could definitely be leading into Book of Boba Fett, which I feel like a lot of us are really anticipating that, especially to close out the year. But I think it's been a really great review, guys. Thanks a lot for
Yeah.
being on the show. And so, again, we thank the viewers, the listeners, continue to support us here on the YouTube channel with all that you can, with hitting that subscribe button, hitting the like button, leaving us a comment, letting us know your thoughts on this episode, and checking us out on the podcast feed, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff. But we'll be back next week talking Bad Batch episode 9, and then we also have our live show on Wednesdays, so stay tuned with all that. But for now, we are signing out here at the Starfighter Podcast, and we will see you guys soon.